Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and we're delighted to be in conversation today with Jan Steenberg. My name's Jon Harris. I'm the International Education and Business Development Lead for the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport. And Jan here is actually the head of Europe and Asia Pacific supply chain practice for Tata Consultancy Services. He's also very busy with the Institute, and one of his roles is to head up and chair our International Education Standards Committee. So a very warm welcome, Jan.
Thank you. Thanks, John.
Okay. So Jan is going to be one of our key speakers taking part in our Transport and Logistics panel at the Central Asia Trade Forum. So you'll see more of him on the third day. That's on Wednesday, the 6th of October. But for now, we just wanted to ask Jan a few questions, particularly about his passion for education and skills. So let's get right down to it. I mean, Jan, digitalization is kind of a huge theme at the moment, and it's going to be a big part of the discussion we're going to have later in October. Let's have a think a little bit about the big questions about digital and its global impact. So just cast your mind back over the last couple of years. Where have you seen the biggest advances?
There's been many, actually, and I think the sort of beautiful part of when you talk about digital and digital transformation of businesses, and in particular supply chains, is that we've been given a whole new set of tools in our toolbox as supply chain professionals in the last sort of few years. Okay, some of them have been around for a little while, but haven't really been deployed. And what I'm sort of thinking of is sort of Internet of Things, blockchain, robotic process automation, satellite tracking of activities, so accurate sort of GPS, and so on and so forth. And there are many others, of course. Mobility, for example, is another one that I certainly see having come into play in a way that I don't think any of us predicted just a few years ago. So digital is becoming part of the tool set that we have as supply chain professionals. Now, that doesn't change supply chains in themselves, but it changes some of the things that we can do in those supply chains. We can automate processes, we can get track and trace information, we can actually trust that track and trace information because it's using blockchain technology, and we can present that in ways using predictive analytics, AI, machine learning type applications to actually help us understand what all this data means and turn it into useful information that we can act on. And those are some of the things I've seen really change in the last few years.
Excellent. I just want to pick up on one word you gave us in that answer, which was about trust. I mean, at one end of the scale, we've got very aggressive digital transformation. We've got, people at absolute whirlwind with developing stuff. And then you still have generations of people that kind of don't trust the tech. Where are you on that continuum?
It's a very good question, and I think it leads back to the question that you asked about education as well. Where do I see sort of education in this sort of digital world? Because one of the big challenges right now is actually change management. It's about having people with the right set of skills for what you want to achieve, and then apply those skills in an appropriate way. The technology is just an enabler. It's ultimately down to the people who actually operate that technology to make the most of it. And it's sort of one of my, I don't know, the pet hates, if I can put it that way, that I see companies spending millions on implementing new systems and investing in technology, but they don't spend a whole lot of money investing in change management, education, skill upgrades, change of roles, understanding what this means, so things like change impact assessments and so on. And that to me will very quickly, and already is in certain areas, become a major skill gap. We simply will not have supply chain professionals with the right set of skills available to drive some of the advantages advances and advantages of the technology that's now available to us. And I see very, very large organizations actually struggling with that.
Okay, let's stay on that theme. I think what you're saying from that is that making things digital in themselves doesn't necessarily make them better. So from your experience, what kinds of process transformation do we need to look at first before we even launch into the use of digital tech or other interventions? What's your thoughts on that, Jan?
Well, I guess it depends a little bit on the perspective you take on things. I've encouraged a number of organizations to sort of do sandbox type stuff. You know, go out there, find out if you're really interested in these gadgets, because some of them are. Create a sandbox, you know, assign a few people to it, see what value it can bring to your sort of business, understand the implications of it, understand what kind of people you need to actually drive this. And then if you decide, turn it into a project with a proper project charter and a proper organization behind it. Or, in other words, you know, if it doesn't, fail fast, you know, let it go and then move on to something else. So I think it's very much about creating an innovation mindset to drive some of these things within organizations, even large organizations, you know, and smaller ones as well, to actually sort of say, you know what, let's go try a few things, let's sandbox it, let's do a proof of concept, let's see a couple of demos, let's try and understand what this can do for us, and then take it from there. Yeah,
I think we're seeing increasingly as well a lot of the design competitions and some of the innovation competitions that are currently out in UK, Europe and further afield. They are definitely giving permission to try and even permission to fail, because, you know, we learn from those experiences. I think, you know, the mindset issue as well is critical. And that brings us on, I guess, to a little bit about yourself. Perhaps tell us a little bit about your job role and perhaps how you've seen the speed of digitalization impacting on what you do and how you do it at TCS.
Yeah, I mean, TCS is obviously a massive, big organization. We have more than 500,000 people employed globally, and in the consulting area, we only have about 2,000. So we are a very small part of a very large piece of machinery. TCS's background is in technology, IT managed services, etc. So we are very much an organization that believes that technology can make a real difference, and it can. And we've proven that. So when I sort of look at developing our supply chain practices in Europe and in Asia Pacific, I very much look at not just the team that I build, but also how I can enable that team to utilize what I call the strength of TCS. In other words, how can we actually tap into the other, you know, 498,000 people that are working in the organization in a meaningful and structured way. And that's always a trick, because I don't think we have an organization chart covering all 500,000. I don't think we will have, and I think if we even tried, it would be out of date the minute we published it. So knowing who to talk to is very often part of the challenge, but it's a good one to have, actually.
So going back to that mindset, would you say actually it's that kind of meshing effect, having a very willing heart and being kind of ambitious in wanting to reach out to others? That's a critical part of this process, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's, I think it doesn't matter sort of whether you are in industry or you're in consulting or you're in academia or whatever, creating that network around you, understand who's who, understand who can help you and vice versa, you know, how you can help them, is about making yourself useful. And that goes for any job in any industry anywhere in the world. That, I think, is sort of one fundamental piece that I think everyone should realize. The other thing is, of course, supply chain professionals have a unique both opportunity, but also ability to sort of dive into all parts and aspects of a business, because we manage things from the very beginning: order capture, order generation, order processing, all the way through planning, and logistics and fulfillment and procurement activities to go with it. We monitor and manage complexity, and I think a lot of businesses out there have seen that complexity increase in the last few years, not just because of COVID, but very much so because of it. But other things as well come into play. We need to know what's going on, and we need to know it now. We can't wait for sort of a batch job to run overnight, and so on and so forth. So I think we are in a very, very unique situation. I think that you know, someone at some point said, you know, COVID is going to be resolved by scientists, but the solution is going to be delivered by logisticians and supply chain people. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing now. You know, science came up with the answer, the vaccines and so on. It's now up to supply chain people and logistics and transport professionals to make that, you know, a reality and make sure that as many people as possible get vaccinated, as an example.
No, excellent. No, thank you, Jan, for that example there. I mean, I think this brings us very naturally to the area that you're volunteering with CILT on and have been for a number of years, and that's the skills and learning space. Now, you've mentioned, you know, those keywords, you know, the mindset, the attitude, making sure that you're into a problem solving approach that's very inclusive. From your role at CILT as chair of our Global Education Standards Committee, where do you see the biggest opportunities in inverted commas digital supporting skills and learning? You can answer that from an industry perspective or from a CILT perspective, but yeah, what are your thoughts there, Jan?
Yeah, well, I think first of all I'll answer it from a CILT perspective, because I mean, as you know, John, I've been working with and burning for our ethos in CILT for years now, and maybe too many years, but certainly lots of years. And I'm a true believer in lifelong learning. I'm a true believer in you can never know enough, and the more you learn, the less you know. This sort of type thing, you know, you need to constantly be on your toes and acquire new knowledge. And that goes for any profession. That's not unique to supply chain management, logistics, and transport. But we have a unique role to play in society. And I think as we move not just into digital and so on, but also move towards sustainability, circular supply chains, circular economies, etc., climate change agendas that a lot of companies are now picking up for real, we have a much more important role to play than I think a lot of people give us credit for. Education and learning and gaining knowledge is part of that journey. It has to be. And therefore, I think, you know, the more we as an organization can do for our members, some whatever 35,000 people out there in the world, plus all the people who are not members but could be, is we have a vital role to play in all of this. And if for every member we touch on 10 other members, who then touch on 10 other members, we're certainly talking about, or non-members, we're certainly talking about millions of people being influenced by what we in CILT do for education and for promoting, you know, new knowledge and learning in our profession. So I think it's critical, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the ripple effect of skills and learning, we've seen massive changes in the way in which training partners, universities have delivered during the COVID crisis. They continue to be resilient across the world. But importantly, I guess the skills and the things that are being taught have actually really got to lead to competence, haven't they? Because many employers are looking for people that are really on the money when they walk into a job, particularly around their appreciation of digital and what it can do. Is that something you think we need to up our game on?
Yeah, I think we do. I think we are. we maybe I shouldn't say this, but invariably we're always behind the curve in the form, because the world is changing at an increasingly rapid pace. But I think also people are looking to us to ensure that, you know, they meet the right standards. There is the level of quality in education that is required and that companies expect. And that's very much, you know, part of our role to sort of say, yeah, you know, if someone comes around to say hello to you or apply for a job and your business with a, you know, diploma from CILT or an advanced diploma or certificate or whatever it is, you can rely on that qualification having given that person the level of knowledge and expertise that you would expect. So that, I think, is our responsibility to try and ensure that that's actually happening. And I know you and the team are working very, very hard on that, John. So it's a never-ending journey as far as I'm concerned. You know,
It is, yeah, the quest for education and equipping people for industry, you know, will always be there, Jan. So finally, just wrapping this up and looking forward to the Asia Trade Forum, just a couple of thoughts. Where do you think the agenda is going to go in terms of digitalization? And finally, what would you say to a startup business or any other enterprise about the digital agenda if they needed a helping hand? Back to you.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. I think if I start with the last one first, you know, what would I say to a startup? I would say, look where you can leverage your advantage, be clear on what your value proposition is towards your customers, and be good at delivering that value proposition no matter what. And I mean, if you look at certain companies that were startups a few years ago, like Uber or Grab or Airbnb and so on, what they really did was they took a resource, they digitalized the whole marketplace and turned it into something completely new. But the physicality of it wasn't any different, really. Uber didn't put a lot of new taxis and cars on the road. Airbnb didn't create hotel rooms as part of their business, but yet they control more rooms than the Hilton Group does. So I think really, as I say, it's about being clear on what your value proposition is. What is it that you're selling into the market? And then try and apply as many of these digital technologies as you possibly can, because you can reach so many people so quickly by doing that. I mean, I was talking to a wine merchant here in Singapore who was very much, you know, shop oriented. They had a high street place and so on. And when COVID lockdown happened here in Singapore, you know, a year and a half ago, it was, wow, you know, no business suddenly. They didn't have a trading platform or anything like that. But within 4 weeks, they did. They had a trading platform, they connected up to payment methods, and suddenly they could deliver from their shop directly to people at home. And today, their internet sales account for 80% of their total revenue.
Wow.
By the way, their total revenue is more than double what it was just before the lockdown. So, as I say, value proposition in this case was, we have some really good wines and we can present them really well in our shop. We can now create a virtual shop online and you can point and click and choose, and you can get them shipped to your home instead of sort of walking around our shop and select the wines that you want. Very simple example. And there are many others like it, but that's how you need to think. That's the mindset you need to adopt, and then apply the right technology to do it.
Excellent, thank you. And it brings us right back to that mindset, that attitude of how you're going to deploy, how you're going to incorporate digital for much more strategic thinking and much more strategic solutions. I'm afraid we're out of time, Jan, but for those of you watching this video, we do hope that you're going to join us for the expert panel in the transport and logistics streams at the Central Asia Trade Forum. No doubt the value proposition issue that Jan picked up just a moment ago will be a key thing that we'll be talking about with Jan and the other experts that will be there. So for now, thank you so much for checking in. We look forward to seeing you later in October. So goodbye from myself, Jon Harris, and from Jan Steenberg.
Thank you.